The live music industry is shifting fast. Venues are closing, ticket sales are slowing, but there's some light at the end of the tunnel. Let's break it all down. So, in this video, we're going to talk about the club market, festival scene, ticket pricing, and where things are headed next. So, it's been a trend over the last year, all over 2024, where ticket sales have slowed down, but it's mostly for small venues. Now, if you look at the overall market, right, and I guess the barometer, the measurement of how well the touring industry is doing is Live Nation, right? They're the big touring public company that's publicly traded. They have to do quarterly reports to shareholders and to the news and everything. So a lot of people are getting their reports and predictions. I believe I would say from Live Nation, right, in their reports. But it only reflects on the big stuff, the A-list artists, the stadium tours, the arena tours, but it doesn't really address the smaller venues, right? So for starters, the club market is in trouble. And will it stay in trouble? We'll talk about that in this video. But over the last year, what people have noticed is that for the smaller shows, ticket sales have been declining, right? And these will probably be your developing artists, right? So this I'm talking about 500 capacity and under, maybe even 2,000 capacity and under, right? So in the 2,000 capacity and under range, overall, the market has slowed down. And these are your artists that are either developing, they're on their way up, they are kind of just, I wouldn't call it stagnant, but they kind of just been consistently in the same lane throughout their careers, right? They're consistently playing in that 500 to 2,000 cap range. They've never really gone above that, but they also didn't really fall off pretty far either, right? So a lot of them artists just build a long career just staying in that range, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? You can actually make a full-time, amazing living just doing that. And then there's artists that were A-list artists at one point, and they're kind of like in the decline of their career, right? Every artist's career has a curve and up and down, and there's a tail end and a beginning of that curve. And for some artists that do it right and they connect with their fans right, they have a longer tail end, right? And the tail end maybe never ever go to zero. It's just a long tail end, kind of consistently stays the same, right? Those are kind of be your heritage acts that have just been around for a long time. They're household names, but their ticket sales aren't really going back up, right? But it can happen again, right? Where they do jump back up. So, anyways, so NIVA, the National Independent Venue Alliance, they've been talking about how for the smaller venues, right? So a lot of venues in that organization have talked about how shows have just gotten more expensive, right? There are higher costs for tours, so they're paying more for tours, probably also due to competition because the bigger promoters are now promoting smaller shows, right? In their smaller clubs. However, there is a venue I used to work at. Since I'm mentioning a past venue I've worked at, I'm not going to call them out by name, but well, for this context, right? But for those of you that have no kind of my background, you might know what I'm talking about. But there's a venue in their small room. They have two spaces. In their small room, they're in a 70 cap room. They went from doing probably 100, 150 shows a year to now doing like very few shows, right? They're mostly focused on rentals in that space now. They're not doing a lot of ticketed touring shows in there anymore. And it has to do with some of these things, right? Higher costs, lower sales, and increased competition driving up the price. An example of a smaller venue, Rockwood Music Hall in New York. After 19 years being in business, they shut down. And that's one of the most historic venues in our industry, right? They've hosted legends like Lady Gaga, Childish Gambino, Norah Jones. It was known for so many artists just kind of showing up at the venue and randomly jumping on whoever's on stage, right? Or randomly playing a set or doing unannounced shows. And that's a historic venue that has now shut its doors in 2024. You know, a lot of it is attributed to rising costs. So artist fees are higher, production costs are higher, rent, interest rates, right? Improving the venue has gone up. Fans are prioritizing A-list shows, so they're spending way more than ever. So even if you look at the average price of a concert ticket, that has gone up year over year, right? So that points to some of the successes that Live Nation has had because they have more revenue coming in because now people are spending $250 to $500 a ticket, leaving no room for the smaller shows. Another contributor to smaller venues hurting is a part of me that doesn't feel bad about this part, right? If you know about me, I like to promote health, right? Health is a priority. I'm even drinking a healthier alternative drink right now, right? But alcohol sales are lower. Alcohol sales for Gen Z and millennials have slowed down drastically for what they've been in people in that age group, right? So millennials today are probably early 40s to late 20s, right? And then late 20s to maybe mid-teens. Those are your Gen Z, right? And those age groups compared to past age groups or past generations in that age group are drinking far less. They're spending 20%. So Gen Z is spending 20% less than millennials on drinks at venues, and even millennials have shifted to other beverages, right? Things like Liquid Death is a very popular drink now. You'll see a lot of venues, a lot of Live Nation venues offer Liquid Death. Live Nation just last week announced another partnership with Athletic Brewing Company, which has non-alcoholic options that's going to be available at over 100 plus of their venues. So people are just drinking less alcohol, right? And again, in a way, for society, that's good, right? For health, overall health, that's a good thing. However, in terms of venues staying in business, a friend of mine used to always say, we're not really in the business of concerts, we're in the business of selling beers, and the concert just happens to be the thing that we're bringing in to sell beers, right? And the reason he said that is because we make most of our money, or promoters and venues make most of their money selling F&B, and now if that gross has gone down as well over the last couple of years, then of course that's going to hurt their bottom line as well, right? So a lot of factors hurting smaller venues. Also, globally, right? So 125 grassroots venues have shut down in the UK over the last 2 years. So another indicator that is impacting our smaller venues. So festivals. Let's talk about festivals real quick. So in 2024, over 170 festivals were canceled. That's a lot, right? Again, because people are just buying less and less. And I could probably make a video on just festivals. We did a festival last year that actually didn't do too bad. I think the goal of festivals is to be more niche, and maybe Kevin Lyman, the founder of Vans Warped Tour, has a really great video on YouTube. If I remember, I'll link it in the video, in the notes below, the video description. But in that video, it's a TED Talk he did about the Walmartization of music festivals, right? How everyone just wants to do a music festival with this big lineup, and everyone that finds some money they want to put on a festival, and that's kind of what's happening, right? They're doing all the same or similar lineups as everyone else, which means people are not going to go to the same festival over and over again, and sales are declining for festivals as well, and festivals are canceling. But it's the niche boutique festivals with a very unique approach that are just different and stand out, and it's not just because of the music, but what else is happening at the festival that is keeping the ones that are successful alive, right? And of course, the mega festivals, the big ones, are going to do well, but they're still feeling the impact too. Even Coachella is not selling as fast as it has in the past, right? In the past, it would just be sold out right away, where ticket sales have slowed down quite a lot. And Live Nation's earnings, right, they reflect the slowdown even on the festivals and the club market. Another problem is why people aren't buying as much tickets. And this is kind of on the promoters and venues, right? So if you know how ticket fees work, and I don't know if I have a video on this. I should probably do a video on ticket fees. But one of the things that I post on the Patreon is not saying this to promote the Patreon, but of course, sign up. Lots of cool resources there, right? But one of the things that I post on there is tour previews. And the tour previews will list the entire tour and the ticket sales for that tour and the average service fees on those tickets, right? And the last one we just did was off Montreal. So on Patreon, I focus a lot on artists that my patrons will actually book for shows, right? Something that's realistic for them and within their reach to book for shows around the country. And then sometimes on YouTube, I've done some tour previews, and you'll see some more of those soon too. But those will be for bigger artists. But even from the smaller club scene all the way to the arena level, the ticket fees are 30 to 40% of the face value of the ticket, right? So if you have a $100 ticket, you're talking about a $30 to $40 fee on top of a $100 ticket. And the fees are controlled by the venues and the promoters. That's it. That is it. That's not Ticketmaster, greedy Ticketmaster. I've talked about this in a Taylor Swift video I did. It's not greedy Ticketmaster. It's the venues trying to find ways to survive, right? So as sales have slowed down, they're increasing the service fees, right? So some venues, I've seen a Ticketmaster contract recently for a theater that's in that 1,000 to 2,000 capacity range, and tickets over $40. Guess what Ticketmaster is taking? $3. They're adding a $3 fee, right? So less than 10% is the fee that's added onto a $40 ticket for Ticketmaster. So if the fee's 30 to 40%, you know that extra 20 to 30% addition is strictly from the venue. The venue is doing that because this is one of the ways that venues and promoters need to survive, right? With everything being more expensive and ticket sales are slowing down. So the downside of that is that cost is now being pushed to the fan. Fans are buying less tickets, which hurts the developing artists, but the promoters have to do that to survive, right? So developing artists are kind of getting screwed in multiple ways. There's tickets are selling less because people are spending more money on the A-list artists, and then also less tickets are being bought to their shows because the venues have to drive up fees to sell more or to make more revenue, right? To have more total revenue on the table, and those fees are not shared with the artist. And that's one of the things that Lawrence complained about in that DOJ hearing about Ticketmaster a couple years ago, right? That the venues want to take such a big percentage from ticket sales from the artist, but then they have all these other revenue streams that the artist doesn't participate in, and then they want to take a cut from merch, right? Merch cuts are complete BS, and I have a whole video on merch cuts and creative ways to get around merch cuts or pay lower amount on merch cuts. But all right, so finishing on some optimism. So historically, the first quarter and the fourth quarter of the year are your strongest quarters, right? For touring and ticket sales. That is January through March, and then October through December. Those are your strongest time periods of the year for ticket sales. The next one will be Q2, and then Q3 is historically the toughest quarter to get through. So right now, as of this recording, we're late February. Maybe by the time it's out, we're maybe still late February, beginning March, which means we're getting close to the end of Q1, going into Q2, right? Most tours are booking 4 to 6 months out. On the smaller side, the bigger side are booking even further out, right? So what this means for clubs is your Q1 and Q2 is probably done, right? So right now, you're probably getting avails and booking shows for Q3, which is the toughest quarter, right? So be careful, right? Because if you are currently struggling as a promoter or venue, you have to kind of weather the storm until about the end of Q3 tends to be really good, right? So like late August, September, that tends to be a really good time period also to book shows. So maybe one of the videos I should probably also do is on alternative programming. What we used to do a lot when I was at House of Blues, right? It's a lot of alternative programming to help fill dates, to fill gaps, especially in Q3, to really bring up revenue. We'd always be challenged to bring up way more revenue in Q3 than we were previously, and always had this pressure to perform in Q3 because we kind of have to make up for the fact that there aren't as many tours in Q3 because there are a lot of them are playing festivals, and then two, festivals, arenas, amphitheaters that are supporting tours as well. But then 3, the ticket sales are just lower in Q3 because people tend to be traveling. It's summer vacation. Some towns turn into ghost towns, right? When I was in New Orleans kind of turns into a ghost town in July and August. So you have to be very creative in Q3. So for venues that are weathering the storm, I do have some optimism about Q4 that the industry will bounce back, or at least the small clubs will bounce back, right? So if you're in a small club world, 2,000 and under, I feel like there's going to be a really strong bounce back in Q4 this year. Last year was an election year. No matter who you support, right? The election years are always down years in the economy. About half the country feels very optimistic about the economy and where it's going to go. We're not really going to know anyway until like about Q4 how things are going to fall in place. But Q4 tends to be a real strong quarter, and my promoter gut, right, tells me that this year's Q4 is going to be really strong for clubs and for small promoters doing the shows, and specifically 500 and under, but I think 2,000 and under, right? If you're a developing artist that's looking to tour, if you're a promoter that's looking to do shows in the future, maybe start focusing on Q4 right now. If you're a venue that's already open, just try to figure out ways to weather the storm. And in my next video, we'll talk about some solutions on how to weather the storm and other ways to make more money as a venue and to get a little more creative on how to help stay in business. But hopefully this was helpful. Bottom line, the live music industry is at a crossroads, right? Small venues and developing artists are struggling compared to in the past. However, things are looking good, right? The big acts are thriving. The big A-list artists and stadium and arena tour artists, they're doing really, really well. But I think the industry is going to bounce back. Q4 is going to be potentially a game changer. And That's all I got for today. Let me know if in the comments if you have any questions. If you have you noticed any trends in ticket sales going up or down? We'd love to have a discussion going on in comments. Thank you all for watching. Until next time, spread love, positivity, and kindness in the world. Peace, my friends.